Chapter 31, Rejecting Harmony. As Fang Hao restored the car, his wife closed the door, took the keys, and said, "Now, I'll give you another chance. Will you apologize to me?" "Apologize? Why?" Fang Hao ignored his wife and installed the safety seat on the old car. His wife said, "Last night, you yelled at me. You must apologize." "The matter with Chen Mei?" "I'm sorry, I won't apologize. If I apologize, it means that Chen Mei seducing me is reasonable, and I should have been seduced by her. In her new house, in front of her drunk fiancé, putting a green hat on him. Do you want me to be like that?" How could I want you to be that kind of person? You are mine, and no one else can have you. I just want you to apologize for your attitude towards me last night. You looked so fierce. You scared me, you have to apologize to me. Did I look fierce? Of course, you were always fierce. You weren't like this before. I'm different now. I want to take responsibility for this family. I want to fulfill my responsibilities as a husband and a father. Moreover, I'm not the clueless guy fresh out of college 4 years ago. Fine, my mom is here tonight, and I'll be on a business trip tomorrow. I won't be mad at you. If it's installed, come upstairs with me. In an instant, his wife's expression changed. Her mouth pouted, then she smiled, her exquisite features and graceful figure making her irresistible. She surprisingly yielded, making Fang Hao feel like a powerful punch hitting cotton, unable to exert any force. "You can pretend, I'll let you pretend. When I find out who your lover is, will you still be arrogant?" Fang Hao didn't immediately reveal everything, although he had irrefutable evidence of divorce. He didn't know who the adulterer was, and without knowing, he couldn't exact revenge. He was very uncomfortable. Since he couldn't strike the enemy down in one blow, he could only endure for now. The green hat had been worn for 4 years, what difference would a few more days make? At home, the mother-in-law had put the 2 children to bed and was reading a book in the living room. Seeing Fang Hao and his wife returning, she waved for them to come over. She said, Jia is already 3 years old, it's time for enlightenment education. You two aren't fools, you can't raise the children to be fools. Mom, it's too early for the children's education. Let them grow up healthy for now, it's better than anything else. His wife disagreed, presenting her own reasoning. The mother-in-law persisted, so you run out to play, let the children watch smartphones and tablets at home, bowing their heads all day, turning them into members of the head-down generation. Is that healthy? You both work, and no one accompanies the children. Is that healthy? Mom, I don't want to argue with you. Since you're here, enlighten them however you want. His wife didn't care, stretched, and went into the bedroom. Helpless, the mother-in-law then turned her attention to Fang Hao, asking, "And you? Is this your attitude too? Su-ro is your daughter. No matter how she acts cute, you'll indulge her. Even Su-ro's temperament was nurtured by you, but who am I? I'm your son-in-law. But back then, you didn't even look at that kind of." Fang Hao could only play along and said, "Mom is right. We must correct this education method in the future. Starting from now, we'll keep them away from electronic products." "Oh, Mom, what exactly is enlightenment education? I don't understand, you'll have to guide us." He knew his mother-in-law was a professor who liked lecturing, so he let her lecture. In any case, this trick seemed to work quite well. The mother-in-law immediately stabilized her emotions and spent the next half-hour lecturing Fang Hao on enlightenment education. Fang Hao was actually very tired. He had made breakfast for the children in the morning, then busied himself in the infusion hall until noon. In the afternoon, he had to accompany his mentor in seeing patients. After that, back to the infusion hall until 8 o'clock. Even if he were a workhorse, he needed rest. He went back to the bedroom, took a shower, and lay down on the bed. At this moment, the wife approached, actively flirting with him. Seeing no response, she whispered in his ear, "Tomorrow, I have a business trip for a week. You should." Fang Hao pushed away his wife's head and said, "I'm too tired today, not interested." He still felt repulsed and disgusted inside. Especially thinking that even if they were intimate tonight, would she refrain from meeting her lover during the business trip? Or was this trip just an excuse to rendezvous with a lover? If she was planning something so repulsive, why bother pleasing her? Su-ro's face showed astonishment, and a hint of disappointment flashed in her eyes. Particularly the little Fang downstairs showed no reaction at all. In that moment, she doubted her attractiveness. However, she was not one to easily admit defeat. With a snort, she turned around, sleeping with her back to Fang Hao, expecting him to initiate contact. But Fang Hao didn't make a move, and after a while, she heard his snoring. Annoyed, she sat up, pinched Fang Hao's nose, and kicked him. To her surprise, Fang Hao remained unresponsive, like a dead pig. Left with no choice, she lay next to Fang Hao, using her hand to gently stroke his face. She found solace in the handsome face of her foolish husband. "Stupid husband, I wanted to be with you, but you're not cooperating. Now, you'll have to wait for several days." Su Ro snuggled into Fang Hao's arms, feeling resentful. At some point, she felt the man beside her turning over. When she woke up, it was already 6 o'clock. Seeing that little Fang was up, she hugged Fang Hao and asked, "Honey, I'll be on a business trip in a while. Do you miss me? We've been married for several years. You've been on business trips more than once or twice. What's there to miss? I need to read a paper." "You, let go. The hospital will be busy today, and it's too early for this." Fang Hao noticed that little Fang was caught, as the young man, still disciplined, had the habit of waking up early. He pushed away his wife's hand. He said, "Mom is already awake. If she hears something, it won't be good." Fang Hao found it amusing when he gave this excuse. Before, he didn't know his wife was deceiving him. He thought his wife married him because she loved him. At that time, he was a lickspittle, trying to please his wife whenever he had the chance. However, his wife didn't want to be intimate with him for various reasons, one of them being the presence of her mother-in-law. Now, he used this reason to fend off his wife, rejecting her advances. It felt refreshing. He got up, ignoring his wife's changing expression, put on his clothes, covering the awkwardness of little Fang. He went out directly. He could see his mother-in-law in the living room, so he greeted her. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a pillow flying towards him. It was thrown by his wife, and he quickly closed the door. "Damn, who do you think you are? Do you think I'll touch you? Now, I find you disgusting." Fang Hao felt bitter. Even though he realized he was worthless, he was pushing his wife towards her lover. As a husband, if he couldn't satisfy his wife, she would find someone else. But he had already decided on a divorce, and he didn't care about his wife's actions outside. A wretched woman, he didn't want to pity her. The only thing he wanted was to find out who the bastard was. And then, retaliate against that bastard. Chapter 32, Intentionally Telling Me? The Enlightenment education by the mother-in-law began today. She woke the two children up early and, following her method, started half an hour of digitized imagery management. Jiajia's performance was reasonably good, she quickly mastered it. In the mother-in-law's eyes, this was an early sign of intellectual development and worth cultivating. Tian, on the other hand, was quite different. He seemed groggy, as if he hadn't fully awakened. The mother-in-law's preliminary conclusion was that he couldn't be carved from rotten wood. From the critical gaze she cast on Fang Hao, it seemed like she was telling him that Tian inherited his dumb genes and was just as foolish. "If I weren't foolish, would I still be your son-in-law?" Fang Hao thought to himself. He didn't blame his son, after all, he was his own flesh and blood. Even if Jiajia performed exceptionally well, she was someone else's offspring, from another family. Ouch, that hurt, buddy. In the morning, Fang Hao had to drop the kids off and also give his mother-in-law a ride to East Jiang University. After that, he would head back to the hospital. His little electric bike wouldn't be suitable for this. As for his wife, Fang Hao felt there was resentment in her eyes. After all, he ignored her advances last night and this morning. "Mom, I'll leave the car here. I can't leave the hospital right now. I'll take a bus to the hospital later." Fang Hao checked the time. Taking the bus would be perfectly on schedule, and if he drove away, he would have to come back to pick up his mother-in-law at noon, which would be a waste of time. At noon, he could spend 1 or 2 hours at the hospital, either catching up on news or reading medical books. Once he identified his wife's lover, he would proceed with the divorce. Then, Zhoufan wouldn't be his mother-in-law anymore, and there would be no need to be overly cordial. Now, he needed to think more about himself. If he wanted to stay in the hospital and develop in East Jiangdong City, he had to quickly make achievements in medical skills. Until he obtained the prescription rights, he couldn't practice medicine, so he had to elevate his educational background. Having completed the master's program at Peking University, he needed to continue and pursue a doctoral degree. This was the foundation for survival after divorce. A man must look out for himself. No need. I have a meeting in the afternoon, and I can't leave at noon. You can take the car. His mother-in-law allowed Fang Hao to take the car, and she slowly walked into the main building of the mathematics department. Mom is getting old. Fang Hao noticed that his mother-in-law's white hair was quite conspicuous, especially when compared to some black-haired university students. If she knew I was going to divorce Su Ro, and that her daughter had been cheating for 4 years, what would she think? The scene should be quite spectacular. Fang Hao vaguely felt a bit excited. If this lofty university professor found out her precious daughter was morally corrupt, did their elite education still have any meaning? Elite education had produced a woman who had been cheating for 4 years. How ironic. Wait a minute. Like mother, like daughter. What if the mother knew about the daughter's actions? Would they all be conspiring to deceive me? This seems a bit far-fetched, but I can't rule out the possibility. However, that would make the revelation even more spectacular. When I expose your false facade, your entire family of drama enthusiasts will make their debut. How exciting would that be? Fang Hao felt that this ending would give him goosebumps. Stunned for a moment in the car, Fang Hao forgot to start driving until the security guard from the main building urged him to leave. He finally departed. Halfway, he unexpectedly received a call from his wife. Puzzled by the sudden call, he answered. Honey, where are you? Did you drop my mom off at the university? I'm driving. Just left the university. What's up? Is there anyone with you? No. What's going on? Honey, have I disgusted you? What? Last night and this morning, why did you reject me? I wanted to be intimate with you, but you ignored me. Why wouldn't I love you? Do you not have any self-awareness? Fang Hao almost blurted out these words but instead said, I'm genuinely tired. I just switched positions, and my workload has increased. My mentor also gave me a lot of work. I'm really exhausted. While he was speaking, Chen Mei's call came in. He hung up on her, but she called again. Reluctantly, he answered but kept the call on standby, prioritizing his wife. Why is it silent suddenly? His wife asked. Your friend Chen Mei called again, trying to seduce me. What does this woman want? What? Chen Mei? Is she joking with you? Oh, you think it's a joke? Then I'll make a joke too. What if, during these days you're away on a business trip, you can't resist being tempted by another man? Will you be able to control yourself? No, I won't. I'm going on this trip with the chairman and sharing a room. Really? In an unfamiliar place, if you go out for a fast food meal, will the chairman know? Will you tell me? Annoying. Why are you thinking like that? If you're afraid I can't control myself, why didn't you get up last night? Really? I gave you a chance. Honey, you're really mean. You gave me a chance, aren't you afraid I can't resist? You've lost control a long time ago. Fang Hao suddenly asked, why are you suddenly talking about these topics today? Are you intentionally telling me? No, nothing. I just wanted to tease you because you didn't get up last night. Humph. Oh, I'm driving. I'll hang up. Fang Hao's expression turned cold. His wife must be in a relatively private and secure place, possibly using her 2 phones simultaneously, one for her lover and the other for her husband, to stir up some jealousy. After all, she would be away for a few days on a business trip, providing the perfect opportunity for her lover. Regarding his wife's claim of going on a business trip with the chairman, who knows? Even if it's true, can the chairman watch her 24/7? Damn it. Fang Hao felt disgusted. After a moment's thought, he picked up Chen Mei's call. What's the matter? Your wife is going on a business trip, and you're alone. Come out for a drink. Don't worry, your wife agreed, and she asked me to keep an eye on you. Boring. Anything else? The best man's matter. You need to come for a rehearsal. Never mind. I'm not suitable to be your best man. That's it. Fang Hao hung up directly. After the episode with Chen Mei, he saw through her character, a carefree person who didn't consider others and a woman playing with fire. He already had a wife who played with fire, and he didn't want the next woman to be the same. It would be exhausting. Now he even thought that if there were another marriage, he might even turn back time to 4 years ago. He wouldn't choose someone as attractive as Su Ro but would find someone with an ordinary appearance, a gentle and considerate personality. He might even go back to the village and find someone like his mother, a girl who only knew how to stay by the hearth. At least, there wouldn't be a green hat over his head. Oops, I almost forgot, the results of the paternity test between Zheng Quan and Jia Jia are also out. I wonder if Zheng Quan is the scoundrel. Chapter 33, too naive. Fang Hao contacted his fellow alumnus from the appraisal center and scheduled a meeting at noon to discuss the transaction. Returning to work, he found the head nurse waiting by the time clock, ready to catch him for being late and deduct some of his salary. Thinking that he hadn't been late, Fang Hao believed he could get through this unscathed. However, reality proved otherwise. During the morning shift's briefing, the head nurse held a book, Fang Hao's medical book, and raised it, sternly asking, "Whose book is this?" Many nurses were puzzled. Wasn't it obvious? Such a professional book, could they understand it? Only Fang Hao could, so it had to be his. Fang Hao said, "Head nurse, this is mine." As he reached to take it back, the head nurse's next move shocked and infuriated him. She casually tossed the book into the trash bin and scolded, "During working hours, what are you doing reading these books? Is it related to your job?" Other nurses were also shocked, not understanding why the head nurse suddenly lost her temper and why she singled out Fang Hao. They felt sympathy for Fang Hao, unable to comprehend why this handsome guy had such bad luck. He had offended the leaders in the inpatient department and now offended the head nurse here. It wasn't easy for him. The head nurse pointed at the nurses and said, "All of you, from now on, during your shifts, no reading books, no using phones, no eating snacks, no whispering. Otherwise, deductions. Understood?" The nurses didn't dare to defy the head nurse and had to comply for the time being. Puff. At this moment, everyone saw Fang Hao pick up the book from the trash bin, pat off the imaginary dirt, and shake the pages, making a rustling sound. His expression was calm, unfazed. The head nurse frowned and scolded, "Fang Hao, did you hear what I just said?" Fang Hao glanced at the head nurse with a cold look and said, "Are you done? I need to go to work." The nurses felt a bit uneasy, afraid that Fang Hao and the head nurse would have a conflict. However, the head nurse, facing Fang Hao's cold gaze, felt inexplicably uneasy, as if being contemptuously looked down upon by a king. She took a step forward and said, "What are you staring at? Do you want to hit me? Go ahead." "Head nurse, you've misunderstood. I'm a doctor, not a thug. I'm afraid you'll lie down and accuse me. My 3 years of bonuses have been cancelled, and I only have basic wages. Yesterday, you deducted 100 from me. I'm broke. I'm very poor. Please spare me." Fang Hao grinned, a bit cheeky. The head nurse was taken aback. She hadn't expected Fang Hao to be so cheeky, making her feel uneasy. Yes, uneasy. If Fang Hao had erupted in anger and wanted to hit her, she wouldn't be afraid of such a person. However, Fang Hao, this kind of person, was too patient. He gave her the feeling of a dog that might bite at any moment, but such a dog was the most dangerous, as it was genuinely capable of biting. Other nurses also found Fang Hao's restraint admirable. Going against the leadership had already cost him once, he couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. They also felt sorry for Fang Hao's helplessness, thinking that Fang Hao was being bullied and dared not get angry or scold back. Such a man seemed hopeless. But they also thought Fang Hao was too pitiful. His 3 years of bonuses and benefits were cancelled, leaving only basic wages. This meant he would have to tighten his belt. The head nurse, realizing that her combination of moves was unexpectedly ineffective, found it uninteresting. It was time for work, so she ended the meeting and went to the ward for the shift. The infusion hall was still quite busy today, but Fang Hao had restrained himself, slowing down his movements considerably. He no longer pursued speed like before but worked at a steady pace. He conserved his energy for the afternoon clinic. The team leader for the shift was the lively nurse who was about to get married. Seeing that the head nurse was not around, she whispered to Fang Hao, "How's it going? Did the head nurse really get to you? What would you do if it were you?" Fang Hao casually asked. "Well, I've been through the same thing. The head nurse picking on us female staff is one thing, but you're a man. She should have a soft spot for men. Wait a minute, she must be jealous of you. You're younger and more handsome than her husband. Since she can't have you, she wants to ruin you." This nurse team leader had quite the imagination. What kind of nonsense is this? Have you been reading too many novels and watching too much TV drama? No way. But think about it, you just arrived, and you're already targeted. Moreover, you solved a big problem yesterday. You should be rewarded, not targeted even more. Hey, did the head nurse invite you out for drinks and dinner last night? Did you reject her? Fang Hao glanced at the nurse team leader, realizing she was quite gossip-prone. He said, "I went home right after work last night." Are you suggesting that having drinks and dinner would have made a difference? The team leader said, of course. As long as you please the head nurse, she'll treat you well. Fang Hao chuckled, that sounds terrifying. The team leader shivered and shook her arm, feeling goosebumps. Fang Hao continued, I'd rather die. Haha, that's the spirit. The team leader could sense that Fang Hao truly disliked the head nurse. She felt somewhat relieved, thinking that if she couldn't have Fang Hao, the head nurse couldn't either. However, she didn't know that this gossip inadvertently gave Fang Hao an idea, a strategy to deal with the head nurse. Fang Hao also had a principle, I won't provoke others, but if others provoke me, I won't let them off. The continuous harassment from the head nurse had pushed Fang Hao to his limit. He needed to retaliate and make her regret her actions. He began to pay attention to the head nurse's actions and noticed that she still sneaked looks at her phone, spoke in whispers, and even said some cheesy things that couldn't possibly be directed at her husband. After observing for a while, Fang Hao found that the head nurse and Lu Jian seemed to share some ambiguous glances. Their relationship was not that of a typical superior and subordinate. One noteworthy incident was when the head nurse reported on her work, and she purposely or unconsciously brushed against Lu Jian's arm. Surprisingly, Lu Jian didn't avoid it at all. Such intimacy wasn't normal between a male and female superior and subordinate. It turned out that Lu Jian, this fat guy, didn't like me. This head nurse is just Lu Jian's lapdog. But I don't have any grudges with Lu Jian. Could it be Director Luo from the inpatient department? I did confront Director Luo. Could she be retaliating against me, making me the scapegoat? This is really vindictive. The more Fang Hao thought about it, the more he felt that he might have offended someone in the inpatient department over the past 4 years. Just like his wife's affair, he was completely oblivious. Thinking about this, he felt a chill running down his spine. Chapter 34, You Can't Get Any Worse. In life, priorities need to be set. Fang Hao decided to temporarily set aside the issue of being targeted at the hospital. He needed to focus on finding out who his wife's lover was and obtaining the prescription authority to qualify for a PhD. Since the head nurse wouldn't allow him to read, Fang Hao sneaked off to the restroom to glance at the knowledge points saved on his phone. He even managed to learn by looking through the patient records. At noon, he went to the appraisal center, made a transaction, and obtained the results of the paternity test. The result, Jia and Zhang Quan were not biologically related. He felt a bit helpless. If the test had confirmed that Zhang Quan was Jia's father, he could have exposed the affair, ending this torment. However, when he remembered Zhang Quan intentionally circling his wife's wrist during their handshake, he realized he was still trapped in a painful situation. The jerk who entered that night wasn't Zhang Quan, but that didn't mean his wife and Zhang Quan didn't know each other. In Fang Hao's view, his wife, being so beautiful, would attract attention from other men. This incident only highlighted her lack of respect for her husband. What kind of woman would willingly involve herself with another man on her wedding day? It showed a complete lack of integrity. Disgusted, Fang Hao tore up the test results and vented his frustration in the car, shouting to release the pent-up dissatisfaction. After calming down, he refocused his energy on finding out his wife's lover and quickly obtaining the prescription authority for his PhD. At noon, he used his mentor's computer to work on his thesis and related tasks. His mentor handed him a delivery slip and said, "Your application form for the PhD program. Fill it out and send it." Fang Hao was overjoyed, opened the package, and took a look. It required the same steps as applying for the part-time master's program: application, unit certification, a partial payment, and approval through an audit. Then, the study materials would be mailed over. However, Fang Hao also needed to submit assignments, pass exams, and write a thesis. Although the examination process for the PhD was relatively relaxed, it wasn't entirely a formality. Yet, as a doctor, once he obtained prescription authority and started consultations, the PhD thesis assessment would become much more stringent. Apart from publishing a paper, there would be an interview. Passing the interview was the key to success. His mentor, Su Cheng, had experienced difficulties in the interview and had been delayed several times before graduating. However, Fang Hao saw this as an opportunity. He filled out the application form seriously, and after his mentor took it to get the unit stamp, he paid the fee online, completed all necessary procedures, and sent it out as quickly as possible. Watching the courier take away the package, he prayed earnestly. He had to pass the audit, success was a must. Fang Hao, you can't get any worse. You must succeed. If you don't want to be trampled on, you have to rely on yourself. Fang Hao encouraged himself and then briskly walked towards the outpatient building. Today, there were more people at his mentor's clinic. In just an hour, 10 patients had already been seen. However, at 4 o'clock, his mentor asked Fang Hao to stop registering patients at the nurse station, explaining that there would be a surgery, and he needed to assist. Fang Hao followed along but couldn't enter the operating room. Instead, he observed from the adjacent observation room. It was a liver tumor excision surgery, and Fang Hao watched attentively, taking notes. He even envisioned himself as the lead surgeon, contemplating how he would handle the procedure. Gradually, his mind started to play tricks on him. He began to imagine the patient as his wife's lover. In his mind, he held the scalpel and cut open the lover's abdomen, removing the liver and digging out the heart to check if it was tainted. The vividness of this imagination chilled him, making him quickly refocus on the surgery. Waiting for his mentor outside the stairs, Fang Hao noticed that his mentor's hands were trembling. Frowning, he wondered if his mentor hadn't rested well the previous night. Suddenly, his mentor asked, Fang Hao, do you want to lead a surgery? Fang Hao was surprised and asked, me, do I have the qualifications? It wasn't that Fang Hao truly lacked the qualifications. With his medical license, he had the right to perform surgeries. However, in this provincial hospital, considering seniority and hierarchy, he didn't have that privilege. Moreover, after the medical dispute incident, who would allow him to wield a surgical scalpel? His mentor paused for a moment and said, don't be disheartened. There's a small operation coming up, I'll arrange it for you. Thank you, mentor. Fang Hao knew that these small surgeries were likely to be simple procedures like appendectomies. Appendectomy surgeries were relatively straightforward, and many attending physicians would delegate them to their students for practice. Even this opportunity made him pleasantly surprised because, in the hospital, the chance to handle a surgical scalpel was scarce. As a doctor, who wouldn't fantasize about wielding a surgical scalpel under the shadowless lamp, performing surgeries to save lives? More practically, becoming a surgeon would significantly elevate his status, providing a broader path for him after his divorce. In the evening, the kindergarten teacher called, saying that there was no one to pick up the child. Fang Hao called his mother-in-law, who was engrossed in a scholarly seminar and had forgotten about picking up their child. She urged him to rush over. This scholar was really something. Fang Hao glanced at the watchful eye of the head nurse nearby. When he tried to request a short leave, he was denied. So, he called their neighbor, Yue Li, who readily agreed to pick up the child and even sent him a message after reaching home. Later, Jiangtai came. Her child was recovering well, and only one more injection was left. Both the head nurse and the team leader avoided facing Jiangtai, fearing another outburst of anger from her. When they saw Fang Hao effortlessly amusing the child and smoothly administering the injection, earning Jiangtai's approval and a smile, the head nurse was envious. If only she could climb up this big tree, she could make it big. Seeing Fang Hao performing routine tasks without deliberately pleasing Jiangtai, the head nurse couldn't help feeling disdain. She thought that Fang Hao was just a blockhead. Jiangtai's presence also put Lu Jian on edge. He came over to watch, afraid of any unexpected incidents. Both the head nurse and Lu Jian had to wait until Jiangtai finished her injection before finally heaving a sigh of relief. Observing Fang Hao sitting at the nurse station, casually flipping through medical records, the head nurse whispered to Lu Jian, "Do you think Fang Hao should try to win over Jiangtai?" Lu Jian glared at the head nurse and said, "Win her over? That would only make things worse. Besides, he's just a junior doctor. What could he possibly do for Jiangtai? Once he leaves this hospital, he's nothing." True. Well, he's really going to be ruined. The head nurse smirked with a smug and playful expression. Chapter 35, Crisis of the Mother-in-Law. Li Jia, I really appreciate your help. Fang Hao rushed home from the hospital, then went to the neighbor's house to pick up the child. He apologized and expressed his gratitude profusely. "It's no problem. I don't have to work, and you guys are both working. I have nothing else to do anyway." Yue Li was quite straightforward. Being alone at home, she wouldn't mind having more people around. She envied both Su Ro and Fang Hao, who had jobs that allowed them to interact with many people. To her, that kind of life seemed fulfilling. After a moment of thought, Fang Hao suggested, How about we go out together this weekend? Both families. Rue Li's heart skipped a beat because she knew the female lead of the neighboring family was not at home. Moreover, her husband was away studying and hadn't returned. Rue Li found Fang Hao handsome, sunny, and refined, plus they were of the same age. She really wanted to agree, but hesitated, saying, I have to check with Lao Dong about this. Sure, take your time. It's 3 days until the weekend, no rush. Without overthinking it, Fang Hao thanked her again and took the child home first. Because Rue Li had already prepared dinner for the children, Fang Hao had to help them with their evening routines, taking up some more time. A bit later, he called his mother-in-law, who was still at the university, asking him to pick her up. After instructing the children, he hurried to Jiangdong University. He returned earlier than expected, but his mother-in-law walked very slowly. He asked, Mom, are you tired? I'm fine. However, on the way back, his mother-in-law asked him to stop in front of a clinic. She went in and bought some medicine. Nitroglycerin? Fang Hao was shocked. He asked, Mom, do you have angina? Sure. Don't speak so loudly. Don't tell your mother or Xiao Rou about this. Don't tell anyone. His mother-in-law returned to the car, put a sublingual tablet under her tongue, then leaned back, closing her eyes to rest. Fang Hao's thoughts were in disarray again. When his mother-in-law got into the car earlier, she was silent, and he thought she was just tired. But seeing the nitroglycerin, he understood her pain. Angina, a coronary artery disease, occurs when the balance between the heart's blood supply and demand is disrupted, leading to symptoms like chest pain. This was also a heart disease. If the pain wasn't relieved with medication during an attack, it could cause further symptoms. The most severe consequence would be a heart attack, which, if delayed, could be fatal. Looking at his mother-in-law, he noticed her weakness. The wise, stern, and proud mother-in-law he first met seemed to have disappeared. She now appeared no different from any other frail and lonely elderly person in the hospital. If I reveal the affair between her daughter and me, can she persevere? But I can't continue with Su Rou, divorce is inevitable. What should I do? Fang Hao felt regretful. In the car, silence lingered. It took a considerable amount of time before he broke the calm and said, Mom, how long have you had these symptoms? Not long, just found out. That's why I withdrew from some courses. I'm much better now. Let's go home, this minor ailment won't take my life. Mom, I'm a doctor. Being a doctor means being a responsible one. Tell me, can this ailment take my life? Yes. Shut up, quack. Go home. Remember, don't tell anyone, including your father and Xiao Rou. Otherwise, you'll be the death of me. Mom, this illness might not be minor. Stop with the courses and studying this dry mathematics. Retire and enjoy your retirement. Shut up. You're talking about taking my life. You quack, I don't trust you. Mom. Shut up. Drive home. Leave the 2 kids at home, you ran out alone. You've got guts. Hurry home. Mom. If you know I have angina, why argue with me? Are you afraid of aggravating my condition? The conversation ends here. His mother-in-law didn't give him a chance to speak and instinctively touched her chest. Fang Hao could only compromise for now. Back home, Fang Hao called out to the little ones at the door, but there was no response. Worried, he rushed inside and found both children sound asleep. He took a moment to tidy up their clothes and bedding, adjusting their sleeping positions without disturbing them. After a quick shower, Fang Hao resumed studying, utilizing every available moment for revision. When fatigue set in, he brewed a cup of coffee and persevered, determined to complete a certain number of chapters. Simultaneously, he intensified his review of minor surgeries like appendectomy, going through the procedures in his mind repeatedly. In a daze, Fang Hao was awakened, only to find his daughter by his side. She spoke in a sweet, childish voice, Daddy, Mommy is angry every day, throwing a tantrum in the living room. Checking the time, Fang Hao saw that it was already 7 p.m. He hurriedly got up, went to the living room, and discovered that Tian's clothes were torn. His mother-in-law had suggested an alternative outfit, but the stubborn child insisted on wearing the damaged one, throwing a tantrum. His mother-in-law, being an intellectual, preferred reasoning over physical punishment. However, dealing with a 3-year-old throwing a tantrum was challenging. How could you reason with them? After examining the torn clothes, Fang Hao decided to mend them. He gave Tian a slap, scaring her into submission. Fang Hao, don't hit the child. His mother-in-law intervened, but seeing that Tian Tian behaved after the slap, she thought, well, your child isn't that precious. Fang Hao held Tian Tian steady and, after asking her to apologize to her grandmother, directed her to eat the breakfast his mother-in-law had prepared. He then took out a needle and thread, swiftly sewing up the tear. Finally, he displayed the mended clothing in front of Tian Tian. See, it's not a big deal. Is it worth fighting with Grandma and getting a spanking from Dad? Let's make a deal. Dad will take you out to play when you come back tonight. Apologize to Grandma and promise not to throw tantrums at her anymore. After a few seconds of eye contact between Fang Tian Tian and Fang Hao, it seemed like she understood. There was a hint of bargaining as she asked, after apologizing, can we go to KFC tonight? Sure. Dad, you can't forget. Dad keeps his promises. Tian Tian then ran over and apologized to her grandmother. The matter was settled, but it did consume some time. Fang Hao quickly washed up and, after having a light meal, had to take the children and his mother-in-law to their respective places. Watching the children enter the kindergarten, Fang Hao said to his mother-in-law, I really didn't expect that I could sew clothes. I don't know how, but it just came to me. Tian Tian is wild and has a bad temper. To deal with her, you have to be even more forceful. After a little scolding, a bit of coaxing, and making a deal, she won't make the same mistake again. Mom, don't spoil her in the future. Jia Jia is clever and sensible, but she shouldn't suffer injustice. Treat them both well, and everything will be peaceful. Fang Hao smiled, feeling that witnessing the growth of these two children might be the biggest accomplishment in the past 4 years. But I never thought you could also sew clothes. Neither Xiaoro nor I can do that. Oh, I just applied the suturing techniques I learned in human anatomy. A bit of knowledge goes a long way, you're quite clever. Oh, Xiaoro has been gone for a day and night. Why hasn't she called? Is she that irresponsible?